There were no footprints in the snow, just the knock at my cabin door. That's the part I still can't explain. How something or someone got close enough to knock, without ever touching the snow that surrounded my cabin like a white, untouched sea. It was New Year's Eve. I'd just turned 33, recently divorced, and I wanted absolutely nothing to do with people, fireworks, or midnight kisses. So I drove 6 hours north to my family's old hunting cabin in Vermont. It hadn't been used in over a year, but I knew it still had the basics: wood stove, solar lights, old pantry staples. More than enough for me to hole up, disconnect from everything, and breathe for a while. By the time I arrived, snow was already falling in thick, lazy flakes. The trees were heavy with it, branches bending and creaking. I shoveled out just enough space to pull my truck off the trail, then started a fire and settled in. That first night was exactly what I needed: quiet, cold, and beautifully still. Until Elf, Fumpf und Vierzig Pay punked mine. I'd been reading by lantern light, wrapped in a blanket near the fire, when I heard it. Knock. Slow, solid, like someone tapping the heel of their hand against the thick wood of the cabin door. I froze. It wasn't the wind. Too clean, too purposeful. I stood, heart pounding in my ears, and approached the door. No peephole, just a bolt lock and an old iron handle. I flicked on the porch light, opened the door a crack. Nobody, and nothing but undisturbed snow all the way to the tree line. No tracks, not even a rabbit trail. I closed the door slowly, locked it, told myself it was a branch falling just right, maybe hitting the wall near the door, or maybe I imagined it. Lack of sleep, long drive, too much quiet. But the next morning, while hauling firewood in from the covered stack behind the cabin, I found a cigarette butt in the snow, still fresh. No frost or snow on it. I don't smoke. It was wedged between the logs, like someone had been standing there, hidden by the overhang, watching the cabin. I didn't set like that. That night, I made sure every window was locked, curtains drawn. I left the porch light on, brought the fire poker to bed with me, just in case. And at exactly midnight, the knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow taps, like punctuation. I sat straight up in bed, didn't move, didn't breathe. The air felt colder somehow, even with the fire still glowing in the stove. I waited, half expecting another knock. None came. I crept to the front window and gently pulled the curtain aside. The porch was empty, but this time, the light above the door was flickering, like it couldn't decide whether to stay on. I didn't sleep much after that. The third night was the worst. The storm had picked up, wind howled around the eaves, and the cabin groaned with every gust. I kept the fire roaring, trying to push the cold out of my bones. Midnight came and went, and for a moment, I thought maybe it was over. Then the lights flickered, twice, and all at once, everything went dark. I reached for my flashlight and stood up, trying to stay calm, trying to remember where I'd put the extra lantern. That sips when I heard it, the click of the door lock. I spun around. The front door was ajar, a few inches of empty space, and beyond it, the frozen dark. I had the only key. I ran to the door and slammed it shut, threw the bolt, heart pounding so loud it felt like it might burst. I didn't open that door again until morning. When the sun came up, everything looked normal. Too normal. No tracks, no broken lock, just fresh snow and silence. But when I went to start my truck, the hood was unlatched, and the battery, completely drained, like someone had opened the hood and disconnected it. My satellite phone, something I kept powered off, unless there was an emergency, was missing from its spot on the dash. That was it. I packed what I could carry, layered on every piece of clothing I brought, and started walking the 5 miles back to the main road. I don't remember much of that hike, just wind, endless snow, and the creeping sense that someone was watching me the whole way. Every time I looked back, the trail was empty. But the feeling stayed, like something was just out of sight, keeping pace. Eventually, I flagged down a snowplow. The driver didn't ask many questions, just cranked the heat and handed me a coffee from his thermos. Later, when I reported everything to the sheriff's office, they took notes, nodded politely, but they didn't seem surprised. One of them, a quiet older guy with a weathered face, asked what night I'd arrived at the cabin. December 30th, I said. He looked at the deputy next to him and muttered, "That sits 2 years in a row now." I asked him what he meant. He told me, in the 90s, there were a string of cabin break-ins in that same area, always isolated properties, always on New Year's Eve, doors unlocked, batteries drained, cigarettes left behind, and always the same thing reported. The knocking. Just that. No robbery, no damage, no one ever caught. Just knock, knock, knock. I haven't been back since. I sold the place 6 months later. Someone else owns it now. But every New Year's, I still think about that door and wonder what would have happened if I'd opened it. The freezer door was sealed shut, but I heard someone knocking from inside. Not just once. Not faint creaks or the thump of a fan starting up. It was a deliberate knock, 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 and I was the only one there. This happened 2 winters ago. During my last year of college, I'd taken a temp job over break at a mid-sized grocery store in northern Minnesota. Just something to make a little extra cash. Stock shelves, mop aisles, push carts through the slush. Most shifts were easy, a little boring, and usually uneventful. But that December, we had a stretch of heavy snowstorms that made everything feel off. The night it started, the snow was already falling in thick sheets by 6 p.m. Most of the day staff left early, and my manager, Ray, told me I could clock out too if I wanted, but I figured I'd stay the full shift. The place was nearly empty, and all I really had to do was tidy up and make sure the back storage area was locked before closing. By 10 p.m., the store was silent. No customers, no music, just the low droning hum of the freezers and overhead fluorescents. I was wheeling an empty cart past the walk-in freezer in the back, massive metal door, thick insulated walls, when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I stopped, listened. Silence. I took a step closer, thinking maybe someone had gone in and gotten locked inside. It happened once at my last job, though those freezers usually had a release handle inside for emergencies. I called out, "Hello? You okay in there?" Nothing. I pulled on the door handle. It didn't budge. That thing was sealed shut, solid as stone. I even leaned in, tried to hear for movement or a voice. Nothing. I shrugged it off. Maybe some pipes shifting from the cold. That's what Ray told me later when I mentioned it. Said it was probably just the building settling, but buildings don't knock like that. The next night, same shift, same storm, and again around 10:10, just after I passed the freezer, 3 knocks. Slower this time. Heavier. I whipped around so fast, I almost dropped my phone. The hallway was empty. Lights buzzing faintly above. I walked straight to the freezer and placed my hand on the metal. Freezing. I tried recording it on my phone, held it there for a few minutes, but the knocks never came while I was filming. I told myself I was being dramatic. I didn't mention it to Ray again, but it kept happening. Every night I worked alone. Always 3 knocks. Always from the freezer. Always when no one else was around. One night I stood in front of the door and just waited. I didn't check my phone. I didn't move. Just watched it. Listening. When the knock came, I swear I felt the floor tremble slightly beneath my feet. I backed away and didn't go near that end of the hallway again. That week, things escalated. It started showing up in other places. In the break room, while I was the only one finishing inventory. Knock, 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 from the metal door leading to the supply closet. Then again, when I was in the employee restroom. 3 soft raps against the back of the stall. I shot up, heart pounding, threw the door open. Nothing there. The bathroom was empty. I stopped drinking water at work, just to avoid using the restroom. One night, just as I was locking up the front doors, I heard it again, but not behind me. It came from the outside. 3 knocks on the glass, right at eye level. I flinched, turned toward the door, and saw nothing but blowing snow and the hazy glow of the parking lot lights. No tracks in the fresh snow. No one outside. That fits when I started hearing my name. Not loud, just a whisper, barely audible. Jess. Right after the knocking. Always whispered, never shouted. I told myself I was stressed. Maybe I was overtired. Finals had just ended, and I'd barely slept for a week. Maybe it was a product of isolation and too much caffeine. But then, on my last shift, I finally snapped. It was late. The storm outside had turned brutal. Zero visibility. Ray had already gone home, said he trusted me to close. I was grabbing my coat from the lockers when I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Only this time, it didn't stop after 3. It kept going. Over and over. Slow, uneven, like someone dragging their knuckles against metal. I turned and realized it wasn't coming from the back anymore. It was coming from my locker. I stood frozen, hands still clutching my coat, staring at the dented beige metal like it might burst open. Then a whisper, right beside my ear. Jess. I dropped everything and ran out. Didn't even lock the doors. I called Ray the next morning and quit. I didn't go back. I didn't pick up my final paycheck. I didn't even return the store-issued vest. But a few days later, out of morbid curiosity, I searched the store's name online. Local news clippings, archive forums, anything weird. That sips when I found it. A small article from 2004. A man, late 20s, reportedly got trapped inside the store's walk-in freezer during a storm when the internal release mechanism failed. No one found him until the next morning. He'd tried knocking, they said. Tried yelling, but no one heard him. Died of hypothermia. His name was Josh. A week later, I started hearing the knocking again. This time, on my bedroom window. I lived on the 2nd floor. There was fresh snow outside. No prints. Just 3 slow, deliberate taps. Every night around 10. Then silence. The car was upside down in the ditch, but the driver was still knocking on my window. This happened almost exactly a year ago, and I still don't like talking about it. I've been a delivery driver for nearly 6 years. Grocery courier stuff. Mostly small towns, back roads, mountain routes. Winter driving is part of the deal. But what happened that night on Cold Hollow Road still messes with my head. It was late, past midnight, and I was coming back from a late drop. Snow had started earlier in the evening, but nothing too serious. The main roads were salted and mostly clear. But for some reason, I decided to take a shortcut. It was dumb. I know. GPS was lagging, and I'd driven Cold Hollow once or twice before during summer. I figured I'd save 15 minutes cutting through the woods instead of looping around. About 5 miles in, the snow picked up, fast. The road narrowed to 1 lane. No shoulder, no lights, just forest on both sides. Thick and silent. My tires started sliding more than I liked. That greasy kind of glide, like the road was wrapped in Teflon. Classic black ice. I dropped to 25 and just kept my hands firm on the wheel. Then I saw it. Red tail lights up ahead, but not where they should have been. These were vertical, pointing straight up into the air. I crept closer and saw the car, a dark sedan flipped upside down in the ditch. Its nose was buried in a snowbank. The back half jutted out, like it had launched off the embankment and landed hard. Steam curled from the crumpled hood. I stopped about 20 feet behind it. Hazard lights on, engine running. No movement. I got out, grabbed my flashlight from the glove box, and walked toward it. It was dead quiet out there. The snow was muffling everything, even my footsteps. I remember how loud my own breath sounded in the still air. "Hello?" I called out, voice low. "Anyone hurt?" Nothing. The car's undercarriage was facing me, the passenger side rear tire still spinning slightly, like it hadn't been there long. I aimed the light into the shattered back window. That's when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. I spun around. Nothing. I swept the woods with the flashlight beam. Empty. I turned back to the car. Knock, knock, knock. This time, from inside the sedan. I stepped closer, heart climbing into my throat, and aimed the beam through the busted driver's side window. There was no one inside. No airbags. No seats. No dash. Just a hollow shell of a vehicle, stripped bare like it had been gutted. And yet the metal had dents on the inside of the door, like fists had pounded it. I backed away fast, almost slipping on the ice, fumbled my phone out, and called 911. The dispatcher sounded calm. Too calm. Said no accident had been reported in that area tonight. Asked if I was sure I had the right road. While I was on the call, headlights crested the hill behind me. A state trooper. I flagged him down and waved him over. He didn't get out right away, just stared at the wreck for a long moment. Then he stepped out and started running the plates. Took one look at the VIN and froze. This can fit be right, he muttered. He pulled something up on the tablet in his cruiser and came back with this weird look on his face. He said the plate matched a crash from 3 years ago. Same make, model, and color. A family of 3 had rolled off that exact bend. Father and 2 kids. The car caught fire before help could arrive. Driver was never found, he added, quietly. I just stared at the wreck again. The snow falling heavier now. I could feel it landing on my shoulders, melting into my hoodie. Then came the knock. But this time, it wasn't set from the wreck. It came from my car. We both turned. On the back window of my Hyundai, a shape was forming, palm-sized. A handprint, pressing into the condensation from the inside. I dropped my flashlight. The trooper yelled, reached for his sidearm. But when we both ran to my car and flung the door open, it was empty. Completely empty. No footprints in the snow. No sign of anyone. Just the quiet hiss of my idling engine. I drove out of there like hell was behind me. Didn't care if I slid into a ditch. I just had to get away. On the way home, the radio cut to static. Loud, harsh static. No stations would tune. Then over the noise, I heard something faint. 3 quick tones. Beep, beep, beep. I recognized it. It was the same emergency dispatch signal I heard when I called 911 earlier. But my phone wasn't even connected to Bluetooth. The static cut off suddenly, and the cabin went silent again. I got home at 2:20 a.m. Didn't sleep, just sat on the couch with every light on, staring at the door, waiting for something else to knock. Next morning, I checked the local news out of instinct. Buried near the bottom of the site was a small article. On this day 3 years ago, a crash on Cold Hollow Road claimed the lives of a father and 2 children. Slippery conditions. High speed. The vehicle was found upside down and on fire. Only 2 bodies recovered. Driver never located. No mention of me, or the trooper, or the car I saw. I thought maybe I imagined it. But later that night, when I got in my car to run an errand, I saw something strange. My dashboard clock was flashing. Reset. It now read 12:03 a.m. The exact time the original crash had supposedly happened. No power outage. No dead battery. Every time I drive on that date, same thing. Clock resets to 12:03 a.m. Only on Cold Hollow's anniversary. I've had it checked. Mechanic says the system's fine. No shorts. No bugs. But eyes have never taken that road again. And I don't plan to, because sometimes When I'm stopped at a red light on snowy nights, I still see red tail lights in the rearview mirror, vertical, like they're pointing up from a ditch. And once, just once, I heard it again. Knock, 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 from my back window. And when I turned, the glass was fogged, with a handprint still pressed there.